I'm Bob Savakinus. Welcome to our program in a nutshell. And as you can see, it's the Halloween season. I have my favorite character on, Leatherface from the Texas Chainsaw movies. So today, obviously, our program is going to be a Halloween-themed episode. With me is my special guest, Tony Bernardi. Tony is a civil engineer, he's an author, and he's a screenwriter. He's the father of 3 wonderful kids, who I happen to know personally, and they are wonderful kids. He's a civil engineer degree from the University of Penn State in design consulting. He works with Labella Associates of Dunmore. He did his internship with PennDOT, and he's also, as I said earlier, a graduate of Penn State University. He's an author of a book called Haunted Scranton, and he's also a screenwriter, which we'll get into a little more details about that. Tony, welcome to our program.
Hi, Bob. Thank you. I'm very happy to be here.
Well, it's good to have you here to talk about this Halloween season. So I guess let's get right into it. You wrote a book a few years back about Haunted Scranton. What actually got you interested in the paranormal, in ghost hunting in the Halloween season?
Well, that's been an interest of mine since I was very young. Ever since I was a little kid, I always had an interest in the paranormal and ghosts and things like that. Nothing really happened to me when I was a kid, to make me, like some people have an experience that, kind of sets them along that path. I didn't really have that till later, and that was pretty much it. When I was young, I had an interest in reading, and I would, get books and similar to the one that I wrote, and pretty much read them, and I collected so many. I just had an interest, and it just kind of grew from there. And then as time went on, I did get involved, later on in my early 20s with some paranormal research groups. We did investigations, and I got to see firsthand that, some of the evidence that we collected, was pretty surprising, and it was very interesting, and that kind of got me hooked even more. So then I went, down the rabbit hole of, investigations and buying all the equipment and all that, and not long after that is when some of the television programs, like Ghost Hunters and things like that came about. But I was doing that stuff a little bit, before the shows came out. But it was a lot of fun, a lot of interesting things. I got to learn a lot of history of, different areas where I did investigations. I mean, a lot of them were local in Scranton, but, I used to, my wife used to, make fun of me, kind of bust me. Well, a lot of places we would visit, there was like there was a haunted site or something, like, okay, we're going to take this trip this weekend. We're going to go down to like Harper's Ferry, West Virginia. And she's like, oh, what's there? What haunted site is there? Because she kind of knew, that there was some other, motive for me wanting to be there. It was just pretty much an interest I had since I was young, and it developed into something else later on.
Okay. So kind of tell us, our audience, a little bit about what does a paranormal investigation kind of look like? Like, it's a team that you kind of described. You started saying a team. So what does this team consist of? What are some of the things that go on when you're doing this investigation?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of, there's some back work, investigation work, where, if you have a haunted site, you want to look into the history of it, and sometimes that's you conduct interviews. If it's in a house, you conduct interviews with homeowners, maybe neighbors, the owners of the property, things like that, to kind of see the things that they experienced. You want to kind of establish some kind of a story, something to kind of follow, and that gives you fuel or just an interest in certain areas of the property or the building that you might want to hit a little harder than others. So there's that aspect. There's the research aspect that goes into it. There's also the technical aspect where, we're buying cameras that have night vision, technology. When I was starting out, the thermal imaging was kind of a newer thing and more expensive at the time, so we didn't really have that stuff. But just, buying the equipment and the batteries and the film and things like that. I mean, at that time, everything wasn't digital like it is now. So, sometimes we were using just regular 35 millimeter cameras and, different media, to try to, see, if this evidence could pop up on, different, your digital video camera as opposed to, just a regular, old tape recorder, and things like that. So, there's a big technical aspect that goes into it where you come in and you set up all your cameras, you pinpoint your locations, and, and then when the lights go down and, it's nighttime and you lock everything down, then, then it's go time and you see, what happens. And we used audio recording equipment and asked questions to try to, provoke a response from any spirits that could be in there and things like that. And, a lot of it is just, using the equipment. And, there's an aspect to that too, where you have to be careful. A lot of the footage you get, of something you think, might be an apparition, it could be dust, it could be a shadow, it could be, anything, and then, you hear voices on your voice recordings, you got to be mindful that it's not, somebody outside the building or things like that. So, it's
You kind of have to look at how you legitimize what you're kind of observing and recording and everything.
Yeah, because once it's out there and you present something as, okay, this could be paranormal to people, it's scrutinized, a lot. So, and then another thing is, there's a lot of people that have an interest in paranormal and they like to see the evidence and things like that, but a lot of the things you have to kind of witness firsthand to really believe them yourself, or like you have to be there, and some of the experience that I've had, I talk to people about them and, like, oh yeah, that sounds great, but, I have to see it to believe it myself. But I experienced a lot on my investigations that made me think that, there are spirits out there and there is a larger world, around us that, some of us might not notice or, might take for granted until they have an experience, and then it kind of opens their eyes up.
Well, it certainly is growing. I've noticed, with the TV shows, the movies, and, obviously in different groups popping up, more and more paranormal investigation type groups and everything. And I've noticed in our area, northeastern Pennsylvania and everything, that there are a lot more of these investigations, activities and stuff. And I guess, because of the large interest, I'm sure the book that you did a few years back is extremely popular. How about we talk a little bit about the book itself? Like, what led up to you wanting to write this book? Obviously, you've had the experiences of doing the investigations, but kind of like what led up to you becoming this author, writing this book on Haunted Scranton?
Okay, well, is this the book you're talking about, Bob?
That is the book I'm talking about, Tony.
Okay, well, yeah, as you said, it has been out for a while. It came out in 2012. It was a great opportunity for me. Pretty much what happened was, at the time, my wife was at the Historical Society doing some research, and talking with the director there, she thought there might be there was always an interest in paranormal and things like that. It was growing, as you said, at the time. So she came up with the idea, like, since I was in a paranormal group at the time, why don't we do a ghost tour of the downtown Scranton and have it as a fundraising opportunity for the Historical Society, which I thought was a great idea. And from there, it just kind of all rolled out. Through that, the Historical Society, we had access to historic buildings in the area, like the Masonic Temple, the Historical Society, the Catlin House building itself, Lackawanna Station, Andy Gavin's Pub and Eatery, just a lot of these like great, local spots that were reported to have some paranormal activity. So we actually got in there firsthand, and we were able to do some investigations, and we got evidence. And from that, I was able to set up the script for the walk. We incorporated the history of the buildings that it was generously provided by the Historical Society, and we tied everything together into a great script. And they're still doing it, to this day. The director's, she's running tours of, downtown with the paranormal, all the stuff that's in the script. And the book came about after that, where the Historical Society, they were contacted by a publishing company that they were looking. They had a ghost paranormal series about certain municipalities and in different states. So they heard a lot about Scranton with the Ghost Walk. So that's how I found out about that lead, and it turned into the book that I'm proud of. It's kind of, it was great. I came full circle. I went from being, a little kid reading these books to actually doing the investigations and then writing a book about my investigations in the town that I was born in which it's, as far as I know, it's the first ghost story book about Scranton. So I'm pretty proud about that. It was pretty great opportunity that I couldn't pass up.
And I know earlier we were talking before we started the show, you were telling me that it's still as popular out there. You get some royalty checks in and things like that.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
it still is a popular book in spite of it being a few years old.
Right.
There's, I guess, always that interest and continuing to be a more of a developing interest. But let's talk a little bit about the book itself, like the locations and things. I know, just driving fairly recently, I heard a commercial for Andy Gavin's, and they talked about, come visit their ghost or something at the restaurant or something like that. And obviously, you said it's in the book.
Right.
Tell us a little bit about some of the stories that you have in the book about some of the locations.
Okay, well, Andy Gavin's was popular for the story about a ghost named George that supposedly lived in the building. I wrote this a long time ago, so I'm trying to pull back the details here. But as far as I know, that building was used as a boarding house. Quite a while ago, before it became a bar in the 70s and the 80s and passed, through ownership. So there was a history, of the building being used for that. So the story was, supposedly a person maybe, died in the building or committed suicide or something like that. Where, we did look into some of the history of that and we did an investigation there, and we did get some surprising, things that happened, some voice phenomena on recordings. There were weird things that happened, and when we were there, I remember, it was just three of us investigating. We were the only ones in the building at the time, because I don't even think at that time there wasn't a tenant upstairs, because there were apartments upstairs. But, we had, there was nobody else in there except for us. And there were things banging, noises going on. There was like it was a fan. I think it was for the one refrigerator that was under the bar. It just turned on by itself, and just things like that happened in there. We never really got clear evidence that the spirit there was named George, but there were things going on there.
I think the colonnade was another.
Yeah, the colonnade had some sightings of a ghost of a little boy that was there. We did look into that, and that was one of the investigations where we brought in one of our friends who's a psychic medium, and to get her interpretation of what happened in that building, and it was pretty surprising, just the stuff that she picked up on without knowing anything about it, where we didn't tell her anything that was going on, and she picked up on the spirit of the boy, and so it's pretty crazy, when the history and the sightings, and then stuff where a psychic could kind of pull that information out of the thin air, and it all kind of fits together.
Well, what I find, I guess, most fascinating is seeing that you always do your historical research. So we're learning about the history of that particular building, that location, that site, and then you're kind of investigating a little bit to see where there could be some reasonings behind why there could be spirits or paranormal activities or something. Do you have any other stories you care to share about some of the other locations that you investigated through the...
Probably in my book, I think it's chapter 4, the most interesting place that I investigated was 320 Penn Avenue. It was formerly known as the Banshee when we were doing investigations there, and the chapter in the book is called the Banshee. Now it's under different ownership, but that one we did 2 investigations there, and that one had quite a bit of activity all over, more concentrated in the basement area, But, other things, pretty much on all the floors, there were 3 floors. The second floor was a hot spot for a ghost of a little girl that's been seen in there. And that was one of the cases where, we got evidence, you want to try to get evidence that, different pieces that kind of add up and fit together. And that was one where I remember I was on actually the 3rd floor with the lead investigator at the time, and we had our voice recording going, and we were just asking questions and things going on, and it was one of those things where we actually heard like a little girl laugh, like it's just a disembodied laugh, and it turned out later on that we actually got that on our voice recording as well. And another thing that happened was we had a camera set up on the 1st floor, and pretty much we got this image of it was a floating orb. I mean, we actually we did see a lot of dust in the building and things like that, but I mean it was definitely different. It was like a glowing orb that actually came down the steps. And when I looked at the time of when that happened, it occurred approximately 5 minutes or so after we got we heard the disembodied laughter of the girl. Mm-hmm. And then, some people saw her actually, like physically saw the ghost, that, the people that worked in the building and things like that, like they saw her on those steps, coming up and down. So, I mean, that was pretty significant, where we had, 2 pieces of evidence that kind of linked together at the same time frame. So that was pretty substantial, but there were a lot of things that happened, in that building. I was down in the basement, and, we did already capture a lot going on there, but I wanted to go down there myself, just to do it. So I was sitting in the vault area of the basement, which is kind of under the sidewalk. And, I'm down there in total darkness, and, I was trying to ask questions to get, something else to happen. And, it was, I think I had a t-shirt on, like it was in the summer, so it was still kind of warm down there. And I'm sitting in this chair, and I said, well, I did all this stuff. I asked all these questions. I guess nobody's here with me. And right after that, I mean, I'm in darkness, but I got this presence that, like, it was like somebody just kind of stepped right in front of me. And then right after that, I could feel, it felt like somebody, raking their finger down my forearm to kind of let me know that I was, that they were there. And I mean, it was the sort of thing, like it was a touch, like it wasn't a spider crawling down my arm or, sweat or something like that. Like it was, really surprising. So things like that, it's, the investigations aren't for the faint of heart. Some people think that, I'd like to, meet up with a ghost and things like that. But, sometimes you witness things that are pretty crazy, and, you kind of have to be prepared for that. Like some people just kind of, they just don't want to be bothered with it anymore. During that investigation, we had, it was a local reporter that wanted to come along with us to kind of document. And, I mean, he didn't make it that far that night. I mean, it was later on in the night when I was down in the basement, but earlier we were in the basement beforehand with the group, and things were happening, and we were getting hearing some disembodied voices and things like that, and he just had enough and walked out. So
it could be upsetting, I guess. Maybe could be
yeah,
a way to look at it. Just because I know of our rich history and everything, I'm not sure if this is the same building or one of the other buildings. I know that one of them was used as a basement, was used for a morgue at one time during the Spanish flu epidemic. So maybe you'll elaborate on that, if you would, please. I
forgot to mention that. That was another interesting part of this, where when we did our initial investigation into the history of the building, we did talk with the owners at the time that told us that they were under the impression that the basement of the building was used as a temporary morgue during the 1918 Spanish flu pandemic that went through the world, and had a pretty big impact in Scranton as well, in Pennsylvania. So when we looked into the history of it, I mean, we didn't find anything that specifically said that it was, but once I looked at the old maps from the time and things like that, we were able to pinpoint that the Scranton, I believe it was called the Scranton Private Hospital, was actually located nearby, like on the same block as that 320 Penn Avenue. And there was an undertaker that was located on the same block as well. So, it would have been, pretty easy to, unfortunately, like if people passed away in the hospital, they could kind of take them out the back. And the reason why the basement of some of these buildings were being used as temporary morgues was because so many people, unfortunately, died in a short amount of time. Undertakers in the city morgue and places like that, and funeral homes, just they couldn't keep up with it. So there had to be some place to store, the bodies of these unfortunate deceased people, before they were laid to rest properly. So once we looked at all that, the location there, at the time it was a dry goods store, and like I said, there's a lot. It was 3 floors plus the basement, which was pretty extensive. So there was a lot of room there to to do that sort of thing. But so that was pretty interesting, I thought, and surprisingly, now we're in this middle of this pandemic still, that kind of echoes into present time, this pandemic situation. So yeah, it's
almost like 100 years later.
It is,
the Spanish
yeah.
flu of 1918, and fast forward 100 plus years later, and we have the coronavirus, COVID situation, and everything. But so your historical research, I mean, does that draw you to sites, or does the feel of the paranormal activity draw you to the site? Or is it a combination?
It's a combination of both, but usually I would say, places that have a lot of history tend to have more paranormal activity. Just with things that happen there. There's if you go to Gettysburg, Gettysburg, for example, huge battlefield. Things happen there. A lot of people died. So there's an impression that's left behind, and there's spirits that are left behind, and people still experience that to this day. So any place that has a lot of history is bound to have something, and for me that's that kind of piques my interest even more. You have the paranormal side, and then you have the history of the place, and linking the two together. If you can do that with your evidence, it's pretty substantial and interesting. So I like it.
Well, I know in my introduction, and we talked a little bit about some of your interest and background and things like that. It sounds like you're also trying to combine the idea of history and the paranormal into storytelling as well. And from what I understand, you wrote a script fairly recently. And from what I understand, again, it was sent out to Los Angeles, and a Hollywood producer is looking at it, and there's a potential to come to our area, northeastern Pennsylvania, and possibly make a movie based on your script idea. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what prompted you to start writing now? Is it because Hollywood is making movies that you don't really appreciate, or do you think that your ideas are kind of an interesting twist in that you're tying history with paranormal?
I think that's the latter. I would say I like this history. I like this place for the history. Like I said, I was born here. I don't live in Scranton. I live in the Abingtons now, but I'm close by. I work in Dunmore, so I've been around for quite some time. And this place has so much with the industrial history and just how this went from a wilderness to almost like an industrial turning point for America with the coal mining and the manufacturing of T-rails and the railroad and things like that. And then you throw in the aspects of this place has some Revolutionary War and Civil War ties as well. So like I said before, any place that has a lot of history is bound to have some ghosts and things like that. But Yeah, I mean, I don't want to mention the script too much, but pretty much, like I said, this place I think has a lot of interesting history, which, maybe some people in the United States and in the world, they don't really know about. So it's another way to kind of shed light on, this area and the accomplishments that it had, and that it's, and where it stands now.
Well, first of all, obviously, I want to congratulate you on writing a book about our area with the history and the paranormal. But now the script idea is even more thrilling, especially for myself, because again, I really want to see our area showcased for movies and outside of northeastern Pennsylvania, what we have to offer as far as how great this area is, and a script that's been, kind of sitting out there and floating out in Los Angeles now about our area. It's great to hear that and everything. What got you into writing or wanting to write now a script after having done a book and your research?
Well, I mean, another hobby of mine, is just writing. I like to write stories. I like to write about interesting characters and plots and things like that. It was something I always just kind of did for the fun of it. And frankly, during the pandemic, I was still working, but you were kind of limited on what you could do. Like you couldn't really go out that much anymore and things like that. So, I kind of thought, well, why not try a movie script? And I had some ideas, and I wanted to link in the history of the area and give it a little bit of a twist, with some horror and thriller aspect to it, and maybe a little bit of an alternate history, where we kind of know how things turned out here, but what happens if things were a little bit different, or something else happened and it went a different way. I always think like that what if situation, could be something interesting to write about. And, I've seen it a little bit, with things in Hollywood now and books and so forth. So I thought it was a good opportunity to kind of tell, this area's history in a different light and, pique people's interests, with, maybe the railroads or the coal mining or, things like that.
Well, when Hollywood calls, don't forget your area here. I know you said that. You're very proud of the area and everything. So as far as like what you just look at out there, as far as the movie industry, do you have favorite horror movies, sci-fi kind of movies, things like that? Like what gets your attention as somebody who has written about it, who has experienced it through the paranormal investigations, has a writing experience, but what gets your attention during this Halloween season? What would you like to be watching out there?
Well, there's a wide range of things. I mean, I'll watch, just your average, Friday the 13th movie or something like that, which, it's fun. But for me, it's, really well-developed stories, like I've been talking about, that pull in history and pull in, situations that, could have more of a psychological aspect and, try to, things that kind of like hit you from all sides. You got the frightening aspect of maybe a scary figure or a monster or a ghost, but, there's also could be, something else going on with, history repeating itself in a bad way or, things like that, like I said, you're hit from all different sides, something that's really well developed with a lot going on. That's what really you get like the total package. That's what I like.
As far as haunted attractions or areas that are considered haunted throughout the United States, in your research, I mean, what areas? You mentioned Gettysburg. Are there other areas that you're aware of that are kind of hot spots for paranormal activity?
Well, there's quite a few.
A few that maybe you'd like to just elaborate on?
Well, let's see. Well, I mentioned Harper's Ferry, West Virginia. I've been there a few times. There's some, Revolutionary War history down there, and it's just an interesting old town. Kind of a little reminiscent of, Jim Thorpe a little bit, a small, really historic town, that's set up there with some interesting, people, I think there was, I can't remember his name, but there was some kind of unusual doctor there that had some crazy experiments in a cave, like located in town, like stuff like that. I really pick up on. It really piques my interest. just my imagination, and I like stuff like that.
So you said Gettysburg, New Orleans. I mean, again,
Yeah, New Orleans. I mean, I really haven't been down there, but even Savannah, Georgia. I mean, that's a hot spot because pretty much there's graves underneath the whole city down there. But yeah, places like that are great to go. I mean, I did spend I took a couple trips over to Europe. There's obviously like big cities like London, and it's going to have a lot like the Tower of London, places like that. But there's also good opportunities just in small towns. I mean, even I mentioned Jim Thorpe, PA. That's actually where I had my first real paranormal evidence that I got. That kind of got me into investigations when I was down there. There was a group at the time, I think they were called the Philadelphia Ghost Hunters Alliance, and they were running, it was like a little weekend trip thing where, you can go down and stay overnight in the inn, which is, supposed to be haunted, and you get dinner, and then you actually, team up with this paranormal team. And they show you at the time, and I was brand new, so they showed me how to use all the equipment and things like that. And they took us into the Asa Packer mansion down there, and it was myself and my wife, who wasn't my wife at the time, but now she is, and we kind of befriended another couple. They were from Pittsburgh that we hadn't met before, but we pretty much teamed up with them for the investigation. And there were other people in the mansion at the time, and they kind of went, a separate way. So we kind of, took our own route and like, okay, we'll investigate, the study. Everybody's going upstairs. We're going to stay down on the first floor and just look at this room. So we had our cameras rolling and our voice recorders rolling and things like that. And I mean, the mansion was beautiful. I mean, it was just, decked out with, just woodwork and, all sorts of lavish decoration and things like that. And I was just awed at like how awesome the place looked. So, I was just talking and I said, directed to the spirits, I'm like, you have a very beautiful home. Thank you for letting us come in and see everything. So we did our little thing, and then we went back to the hotel room or the room at the inn that we were staying, and we started reviewing our evidence. And we got to that point where, we listened to the recording, and you could hear me say, oh, thanks, for letting us stay here. And we got EVP, which is electronic voice phenomenon, and it said, oh, you're welcome. We heard this, grainy but distinct, you're welcome. And, I was just, the hair in the back of my neck just stood up, right. And I'm like, wow, that's crazy. But, it just goes to show you, there's spirits out there and you can communicate with them. And it was something where, just unconsciously I said, thank you for letting us look at your home. And it got a response. So
it's certainly a fascinating story. Getting back again locally, there was a place that I believe that you mentioned to me prior to the interview, the Waverly Sanitarium or something on that level, was it?
Oh, okay. Well, that was the one out in.
Maybe I'm wrong in my location on it, but there was a
there was one out in Newton Ransom.
Okay, perhaps my location was wrong. But you had some stories about that area that. Would you care to share a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, when I was in college, we did go to the site, and some strange things happened. I mean, that was another thing that kind of got me into it, where we weren't really using, paranormal equipment to capture stuff at the time, but, it was the same type of thing. Like, we would see shadows and stuff like that, unexplainable noises and things like that would happen, and just very strange things. And, that was just another way that I saw that, places that have a lot of history and things happen, like an old sanitarium like that, where, people, unfortunately, they were sick and, maybe passed away and things like that. They have some kind of tie to the place even after they're deceased, and they could be around.
Because I noticed like through the years that there's all the shows, you mentioned a few of them like Ghost Hunters and different ones that are out there in national syndicated shows and things like that. And it seems like they did concentrate a lot on sanitarium situations, I guess, I guess for paranormal activities and everything. But if you look out there at the shows that are out there, is there anything that you follow as far as the Ghost Hunter type of show, paranormal investigators? Is anything out there that catches your attention that our viewers would say like, that's a good one I should watch because our local expert recommends it or something?
Well, I mean, I would say, Ghost Hunters is probably the first and best,
Okay.
of the shows. I mean, they seem to do a really good job of, their setup and their review of the evidence and things like that. And, some things, I actually learned, by watching the show. So, I mean, I would say, that would be a good one.
Okay. So then you mentioned earlier that your wife, Olivia, got you kind of moving along with the book and with the ghost tours and things like that. How about your kids? And again, I know your three kids, wonderful kids, Owen and Evan and Gwen. Are any of them following in your footsteps, or do they enjoy going out to maybe do a local haunted attraction or for the Halloween season? I mean, how are your kids growing up with this?
They're taking an interest. I mean, it was kind of the thing when, I was engrossed in all these investigations at a certain point, and then and then the kids came along and they were young, so I had to take a step back from the investigations, to concentrate on them, which was definitely had to be done and was worthwhile, and I put the ghost hunting away. Another reason for that was, I didn't want to bring anything home with me, into my house, or so to speak, and things like that. So, but as it went on, they would hear bits and pieces of conversation with my wife and I talking about like certain investigations and things that I did, and it was funny. I think it was my son Evan. I mean, this was a few years ago, but he's a ninth grader now, but he was in grade school at the time, and he wrote some short story it said I think my dad's a ghost hunter, so it was kind of they knew that there was some history there, but recently. The Historical Society, they're branching out again, with these investigations, and they have another group now that, has been doing some fundraising for them. And we went to an event. It was a month ago or a couple months ago or so, where we went to the Forest Hill Cemetery, and I brought my kids along, and they helped out with the event. And they actually got to do some ghost hunting firsthand and use the equipment, which they loved. So yeah, they're following along and they're in my footsteps a little bit there. They have an interest.
So it's gonna be like a Scooby-Doo gang almost or something.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I mean, if it's something that they're interested in, I mean, I wouldn't mind taking them on investigations and things like that. I mean, they're a lot like I am, and my wife, we have a lot of similar interests in history, and we like to travel. And she's not too heavy on the paranormal investigations. My wife, it kind of gives her the jitters, but she doesn't really want to know too much. But my kids are at that that fearless age where they want to experience something.
So what's next for Tony? Book, screenwriter? Are you going to continue trying to pursue getting more scripts written? Are you going to possibly look at doing another book? Just continue your investigation, raising your family? What is the future for Tony you're looking at?
Probably a little bit of all the above. I'm focused on my kids a lot. Like I said, I have twin boys. They're ninth grade. They're in ninth grade now, so school's getting pretty serious. So we're trying to pinpoint like what they want to do with their future and things like that. So I really want to be involved with that. But as far as me, I'm working as an engineer, which I enjoy in the area. I've had a lot of great projects. Some with the University of Scranton and Marywood. I worked on Mount Airy Hotel Casino. So I mean, I'll definitely keep that up. The screenwriting was a nice surprise. It was something that I dove into, and at first it was like maybe I don't know, I'll give it a shot. I don't know how it's going to go, but it seemed to go pretty well. So we'll see where that goes. So yeah, I would like to write some more scripts. I have a few more ideas. So in my spare time, which is sometimes a little hard to come by these days, with the kids and my other hobbies and things like that. But I'm going to keep going and, you know, see what the future holds.
Okay. Well, Tony, I want to thank you for being our guest today. Keeping our local history alive, putting that little extra flair on it there of the paranormal investigation and everything. And obviously we know we have a great rich history in Lackawanna County and the Scranton area and everything. And who knows, with your script and everything, maybe Hollywood will come calling and will put us back on the map again as a major tourist draw-in area that people will want to come and say, we can make movies in northeastern Pennsylvania again. I know that championship season was done be close to 40 years ago, and that was probably one of the last major Hollywood movie studios or events that came here. But thank you, Tony, for being our guest, and I guess happy Halloween to you and your family. Happy Halloween to our viewers and everything. I'm Bob Savakinus. Thank you for tuning into our program in a nutshell.